You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 39. If you're looking to get promoted to the next rank, particularly within the non-commissioned officer and officer rank, then you've got to put together a promotion packet. And guess what, folks? You are responsible for putting together your own packet.
And
guess
you're
what?
going to need your I Love Me book for that.
You are going to need your I Love Me book for it, because they're going to want copies of everything we just talked about. Everything.
Welcome to Change Your POV Podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Change Your POV Podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary, and today joining us is Bennett Tatton. Now, this is the first of a 5-part series that's geared all towards currently serving military. So this episode tonight, we're going to talk about the I Love Me book. And next week's episode 41, is going to be talking about education. Episode 43, the week after that, will be social media and networking, followed by prepare to separate, and then the last week in this currently serving series is going to be expectations. So again, every week for the next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking specifically to those of you that are currently serving in our beloved armed forces, regardless of what branch that might be. And I hope you can get some value out of this information. But before we get into this interview, I got to say a shout out to this week's sponsor, Audible.com. Head on over to changeyourpov.com/free book for your free 30-day trial and your free audio download. Audible.com has over 180,000 titles to choose from every genre imaginable. I listen to all kinds of audiobooks when I'm on the move. I've got my commute to and from work. I listen to it while I'm mowing the grass, shoveling the snow, on the walk, walking my dogs, or just whenever I get a chance. Sometimes I'll just lay in bed because I can't sleep, and I'll listen to a chapter or two of an audiobook. So head on over to changeyourpov.com/free book for your free 30-day trial and a free audio download. How you doing, Bennett?
Good, man.
Awesome.
Good.
So this I Love Me book, a lot of people are confused by that. And they're like, what the hell is that? So let me just start off by saying that when I first got to my permanent duty station, I finally linked up with my first team chief. I don't even think it was my team chief. I think it was my battalion. I think it was my battalion FSNCO, or Fire Support Non-Commissioned Officer, E7, Sergeant First Class, and really, really good guy. He kind of took me underneath his wing. I'm glad he did, because he taught me a lot, and I looked up to him. And he asked me if I had an I Love Me book, and here I am, Private Lazary, and I'm like,
I don't have a pot to piss in, dude, let alone an I Love Me book already.
I'm like, what the hell is an I Love Me book? And we're gonna describe an I Love Me book, and at the end I'm gonna explain why an I Love Me book is so important when you're in the military. Now, if you're in the military and you've already been in for a couple of years and you haven't started one, that's okay. It's never too late. For those of you who just joined, though, you guys probably have the greatest advantage, because you're hearing this from me here now first, and you will have an opportunity to develop this over time. So this applies to anyone. If you don't already have it, I suggest you get one, and here's why. So an I Love Me book, it's simple. It's a 3-inch 3-ring binder. It's what I use to start off with, and with the plastic document protectors that you buy. So
Right.
Yeah. So all of probably, I don't know, $8, you can buy a 3-ring binder and 100 or so document protectors. And what you do is you just write I love me book on the outside of that bitch, like I did on the spine, and tell your family, your wife, and your kids, do not touch. That's all. It's simple. Now you've got an I love me book. So the question becomes, what the hell do you put in it? And that's what we're going to talk about. So you're going to put in this I love me book anything and everything. And we're going to go through the list of things. So the first thing is, of course, awards. So now when you get an award, you're going to get the fancy, like the award with the citation that's printed on that fancy, thick paper thing that you would put into a frame and hang on your
Right.
wall. You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about? That's the actual award, but you're also going to get like an actual piece of paper that has like, the legit like the all the information on there, the date, the
Yeah,
citation's going to
like
be
the
laid out there.
oh God, it's almost like what goes in your SRB.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
So anybody that's in the military already probably knows what I'm
The
talking about.
service record
That,
book. Yeah, they
yeah,
should. If they don't.
the piece of paper. That's so what I did is I kept both the piece of paper and I never put my awards like in a frame and hung it on the wall.
Yeah, neither
I
did I ever.
yeah. I figured once I got out of the military and I had my own office,
Right.
I would do that. And I still plan on doing that, but my office right now, or I'll say my future office is my son's current room.
Right.
So he's off to college. So I'm not going to kick him out. But once he finally leaves and we get all of his fun posters off the wall, I think I'm going to make this officially my office, and maybe I'll put everything into frames and hang it on the wall then. But so I never hung my stuff on the wall. So I kept it all in this I Love Me book, both the actual award and the piece of paper or document that accompanied it.
Like
I
on the
kept in there.
backside, right?
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. And then the next thing is certificates. So that could be any, I mean, you name it. There's all kinds of certificates you can get in the military. I got certificates for different, trainings that I did. I got certificates for any sorts of, any kinds of anything, any piece of paper you would get that's certificate related. I would put it in the I Love Me book.
Right.
And then the next one is
Yeah, you'll
achievements.
get a shit ton of like certificates of appreciation.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes,
had
absolutely.
a fucking million of those things.
Yeah. So what's kind of weird, my very first certificate of appreciation, when I got to my first duty station at Fort Hood, 4th Infantry Division, 4th Battalion, 42nd Field Artillery, HHB, Headquarters Battery, my company commander, his name escapes me now, but my company commander learned just prior to me arriving there that he was diagnosed with cancer,
Mm,
and he ended up passing away, succumbed to his cancer, and his wife, and he was from like, oh, I don't know, Ohio or something. I mean, he was from some ways away from Fort Hood
mhm.
anyway, and his wife actually went to the brigade commander. And because when you die, while you're in the military, well, if you've got a DD 214 and you got an honorable discharge, you are eligible to a military burial, military funeral,
Right.
and that comes from depending on where you live, it can come from different places. And so she had actually got in contact with the brigade commander and requested specifically that the burial detail be made up of the soldiers that he commanded. And so that NCO that I told you that took me underneath his wing, he was kind of tasked with coming up with the full detail. So that's the six man pallbearer team, as well as the 21 gun salute team. And he asked me if I wanted. I think a PFC, maybe a E2 or PFC at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to be a member of this funeral detail for our company commander. And you just don't say no to something like that when you get asked.
Right.
And I said yes, and he said this. So he goes, you understand what? He goes, understand what you're saying when you say yes. This means that when you say yes, you are committed to this no matter what. I don't care if a family member in your family dies, you will be doing this instead. And I
Oh,
said, okay, I'm in. And so we trained for, obviously we didn't have a whole lot of time to train from the time he passed to the time we actually did the ceremony. But every waking moment was spent basically practicing and going through. And I was part of the 21 gun salute team. And that was my first military funeral. I was actually burying my first company commander. It was very humbling. And I ended up getting a certificate of appreciation for that. And out of all the awards that I got while I was in the military, that was one that really stuck with me and will probably till the day I die. But that's also in my Love Me book. And sorry to go down that deep story, but it just kind of shows you the different types of things that you could end up doing while you're in the military that you end up being recognized for
Yeah, I've
some
got a couple
reason.
certificates of achievement for and personal letters, which is cool, for burial details as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty neat when we got to go on funeral detail.
The next is training courses. So you may attend like a 1-day course, 2-day course. It could be a month-long course, 3-month-long course. It depends on what the course is. But at the end of any course you attend, there's going to be some document that's going to basically say that that you went through the course and you passed, basically, or that you completed it to some degree. Keep that document of those courses. Training certificates, the same thing. So training certificates could be anything from, you're going to get a certificate from basic training. You're going to get it from AIT. You're going to get it from, any of those types of things. You're going to have documentation, qualifications up to and including your weapons qualifications. You may have multiple weapons that you're qualified for. I was qualified on the 50 cal. I was qualified on the M4, and I was qualified on the 9mm pistol. And I had documentation showing my qualification for all three. Your APFT scores. So you're going to get, I think it was every 6 months we had to take the test.
Yep.
I kept all of my APFT results in my I Love Me book.
Or at least the most recent. I used to keep my most recent one.
Yeah, I kept my most recent, and I kept like the 2 previous. And the only reason I kept the 2 previous ones because I wanted to see if I was getting better or worse over time.
Right.
And then licenses. So I was at one point in my career, I was the battalion master driver, which was an additional duty given to me as a non-commissioned officer. So if you're an NCO, you can expect at some point in your career, you will be voluntold that you're going to do some type of additional duty. Don't confuse that with disciplinary additional duty. This is like a straight up non-commissioned officer additional duty, and that's what I did. So I ended up issuing licenses for training individuals and issuing them their license. And so any license that I had, I kept a copy of. So I was licensed for all kinds of different types of military vehicles, up to and including the generator. Yes, and folks, you get licenses for generators. I even got a license in Korea. I got a license for a lawnmower and a license for a weed whacker. Believe it or not.
Oh my Lord.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, shit.
And that's a whole nother story I got to tell you. That's a funny one though. We're gonna have to carve out some time for that. And then access documentation. So if you've got special access privileges, or in this includes security clearances. So perhaps you've got a particular MOS that requires a secret clearance, top secret clearance, whatever. Keep copies of your clearances or any other access documentation. Any schools that you go to. So I went to PLDC, which is Primary Leadership Development course. It's a required school.
What's it called now, though?
Oh, I have no idea.
It's like a warrior leaders course or something like that.
It's the school you go to be an NCO, right?
To become a sergeant or corporal or sergeant.
And I also attended BNOC, Basic Non-Commissioned Officers course, which I don't know if that's still what it's called, but it's the class or the course you go to become a E6 or staff sergeant. And then there's also the ANOC or Advanced Non-Commissioned Officers course. And then, of course, you got your first sergeants, school and academy and sergeant majors and all of that. And then you've got your already covered additional duty documentation, counseling statement. So if you're an E4 and below, you got at least we got monthly counseling statements from our first line supervisor, our team chief. If you're a non-commissioned officer, we got an NCOER, a non-commissioned officer evaluation report. Or if you're an officer, you got an OER, officer's evaluation report, and that was given on a semi-annual basis. And I kept all of that, kept copies of everything, put it in I Love Me book. Your deployment orders, that could be your combat deployment orders. It could be deployment orders to, a different installation or a different unit or whatever. PCS orders, you can PCS to a different division, to a different base or a different camp or fob or whatever. Promotion packet. So if you're looking to get promoted to the next rank, particularly within the non-commissioned officer and officer rank, then you've got to put together a promotion packet. And guess what, folks? You are responsible for putting together your own packet.
And
guess
you're
what?
going to need your I Love Me book for that.
You are going to need your I Love Me book for it, because they're going to want copies of everything we just talked about. Everything. Not the originals. Well, they may need the originals to see it, but they will make copies.
But if you don't have the copies in there, then you don't get credit for it.
That's right. And everything that you've gotten will get some credit. So your awards, depending on what level of award you get, it's worth different points.
Did we bring up transcripts from like school?
No, I did not.
Because that's something else. Because you can get promotion points for that.
Yes.
As well, if you have college.
Even if you've taken one class and it was 3 credits, it's still worth points when you're talking the promotion. You don't need a whole degree.
No.
Any college, anything you have is worth some points. And depending on the cutoff scores for your MOS, some MOSs have much higher cutoff scores than others. So every little bit counts.
Yeah, every little thing counts.
Yep. And again, we already covered promotion packet, but promotion orders. So you get promoted from E1 to E2, E3 to E4, E7 to E8, whatever. You're gonna get some type of promotion order. Those are handy to keep in your I Love Me book. Any kind of recommendations. Now, there's a lot of organizations and a lot of I don't know what the right word is, like fraternities or something. Is kind of, I don't know. It's not really a fraternity, but there's a lot of what's called orders. Like, here's an example. Field artillery is called the King of Battle, and the patron saint of field artillery is Saint Barbara.
Saint Barbara.
Yeah, Saint Barbara. Yeah.
It.
So
this doesn't exist. You're full of shit.
This exists. So Saint Barbara is the patron saint of field artillery, and field artillery is called the King of Battle. Now, get this: infantry is considered the Queen of Battle, and it has a male patron saint. So the Queen of Battle has a male patron saint, and I don't know who that is. And the King of Battle has a female patron saint. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but that's the way it is. And anyway, my platoon sergeant wrote up this awesome recommendation.
Hey, I happen to be infantry, and it's Saint Maurice.
Which is a guy.
Right. Or I guess... Right. You could also say St. Michael is the other. It depends. A lot of guys, it's one of those things that's kind of
I think a lot of people
contention.
I think a lot of people call it St. Michael's.
Right.
St. Michael, right. And I'm not Catholic, but I mean, there's a lot of religious threads within the military. Whether you agree with it or not, I guess tough shit. You got to learn to accept it, because I don't think it's going to change, and I don't think it should.
Right.
So my platoon sergeant, he was a member of the Order of Saint Barbara, and you have to be a member of the order in order to recommend. It's like a secret, like I don't know, the Freemasons or something. I guess would be a good comparison. And so you've got to be recommended by a current member. And I didn't know it was coming. He ended up writing up this awesome recommendation and submitted it all the way up to the command sergeant major. And it got approved. And I ended up finding out that I was being recommended for the Order of St. Barbara. And so every year they take the inductees, and they have this huge ball, almost kind of like very similar to your guys' Marine Corps birthday ball.
Right.
Very, very similar, but it's a celebration and a ceremony specifically around St. Barbara and the Order of St. Barbara. So, and there's a grog, and you know how that is with the
Yeah.
little,
Ugh.
all that, and there was all of that. So we were dressed green in our class A's and all that fun stuff, and it was really really cool. And I got called up there, and I got it's a ribbon. It's an actual like medal that you wear around your neck, and it's the Order of St. Barbara. And so I am a proud member of the Order of St. Barbara. Of course, I got some documentation for all that that's in my Love Me book. And then any other organizations, and I just named that as an example because I don't know all of them. I'm sure every branch has some special thing
Yeah.
that they have that they do, and not just branch, but when I say branch, I mean like Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, but also branch of the military, like infantry, armor,
Signal,
cavalry,
whatever, right?
signal, right? All those, each of those, smaller branches probably have some special thing as well. And then medical records. Keep a copy of your medical records. And I can't stress that enough because so many guys that I know ended up getting discharged out of the military, whether it's for medical reasons or they just separated for whatever reason, and they went to get the medical records when they were clearing to get out, and for whatever reason they lost their medical records, and they were basically given a blanket jacket, an empty jacket, and said, here you go, here's a folder with your name on it, these are your medical records. And I was like, are you kidding me? I did 15 years in the Army. I definitely been to sick call more than 0 times. And it just seems like medical records tend to disappear when you're trying to get out for some reason. I don't know why. But you will eventually have an opportunity to get your hands on them, make copies of whatever you got. And then you've got to turn them in, obviously. But before you turn them in, make copies of that shit. That way, when they lose them, not if they lose them, but when they lose them, you've got copies of your medical records in your I Love Me book.
Mhm.
All right. Now, any other thing that I may have missed or overlooked, Bennett, when it comes to things that should be in an I Love Me book?
I really can't think of any.
Okay. And again, this isn't all inclusive list. This is just a list to kind of get your juices flowing. Basically, when in doubt, put it in your I
I
Love Me
mean,
book.
at the end of the day, if it's something that you want to, that you're proud of getting in
Yeah,
the military, just put it in there.
absolutely.
Especially like while you're in, obviously keep it because it's all good for points. But if it's something that you like, whether it's like a letter from your commander or whatever.
Yep.
Like I have a letter from my brigade commander to me in
Mm,
in mine, and it was pretty freaking cool.
that's
It's not
cool.
every day you get a letter from the brigade commander.
Right.
So I have one of those in there, and then I was the honor grad of my PLDC class, so I've got a handwritten note from the sergeant major of
Mm-hmm.
PLDC in that, and there's some cool shit. So if you feel like you might want to keep it, just put it in there. It can't hurt.
Yeah, just keep it. And so what ended up happening is by the time, I did 10 years in the Army, and it didn't take long before I filled up my 3-ring binder, and I'm like, oh shit, now what? So I went, no big deal. I just went and got another 3-ring binder, and I made a volume 2. Hells yeah. Uh, my, go-
Shit.
my, my goal before I got out, well, I was planning on making a career out of it. My goal was to have a whole bookshelf full of volumes of I Love Me books.
Right.
That was my goal.
That's awesome.
So when you get out, right? So your I Love Me book is going to come in handy while you're in, and I pulled mine off the shelf on more than one occasion. Every time I got promoted, I used it. When I was putting together my points, whenever I was looking for some type of idea or recommendations. And I was, as a non-commissioned officer, part of your job is to also recommend your soldiers for an award. And of course, guess what? You've got to write up those awards. So I use my I Love Me book and things that were written on my awards as kind of inspiration to help me kind of write my soldiers awards. I also used examples of my old counseling statements. I
Mhm.
used examples of my old NCOERs to help craft NCOERs for the NCOs that were under me. So I use my I Love Me book a lot, not just for promotion purposes as well as but for all kinds of things along the way. I referenced my I Love Me book a ton of times. And now, okay, so now we're getting ready to get out. Now, what's the purpose of our I Love Me book? Well, thanks for asking, Bennett. so so you transition out of the military, you've got your I Love Me book. Now the first thing that I tell you is when I was I had obviously I've got a son and a daughter. My son is 20 now and my daughter is 14 now. But I got out in 2005, which if you were to do the math is what 10 years ago.
Right.
So my son was 10 and my daughter was what 3? I think she was 2 when I went to Iraq. So by the time I got out, like my daughter doesn't even remember my time in the military and my son vaguely remembers. So one of the fun things now that they're older is I actually found my I Love Me books a few weeks ago, and I just opened it up and just started to thumb through it and started to share some of those awards and other things that were in there with my kids, and it was a fun time. It was fun to share that with them, and they were like, "Wow, I didn't know you did this," and "Wow, I didn't know you did that." So even though it was something, it was just whatever, something that I did back in the day, but it was really kind of fun for my kids to get to see that. So that's one thing that you can do, and it's something that you can have in the family like for the rest of your life, and perhaps maybe your kids will pass it down to your grandkids, and it just stays in the family, and it's really really cool. Like my grandfather served in the Navy, and I don't have anything. I don't know what where he served. I don't know when he served. I don't know what ship he was on. I don't have any information, and I would love if I had his I Love Me book to be able to thumb through
Right.
today, because I'm just a like history I don't know geek like that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's one thing that you could use your I Love Me book for later in life. But there's also a very very big thing that you'll end up using it for, and this is and I'm going to describe it here. I can't get into too much detail because it really requires getting into like the mechanics of how it works. But I've created, and I created this out of I created it for myself. And they say that, anytime you're making something that could benefit others, you end up creating it for yourself first out of necessity. And it truly is. So I created for myself what's called a career management document, or a CMD. And what it is basically this series of spreadsheets that I've put together and I've created for myself, where I took all of my information out of my I Love Me book and I crafted information in this neat little package called this career management document. And what that's been able to do is I've been able to take all of my military experience and use it to translate into civilian terminology that corporate world would understand. That's the first thing that it does. The second thing that it does is it's a living, breathing document, meaning I keep adding to it as I get more education, as I get more experience, as I get, further up the chain of command within my company in terms of promotions and things like that. And so it continuously grows. My career management document gets bigger and bigger and bigger every year.
Mm-hmm.
And what I use that for is you can easily use that to craft a resume. There's nothing working in management and having sat through many, many interviews, interviewed many, many people, and I've sifted through hundreds and hundreds of resumes. There's nothing more frustrating for a hiring manager than looking at a resume that's clearly a canned resume. What I mean by canned resume is you craft a resume for yourself and you use that single resume and you kick it out to, maybe you apply to 5 jobs on monster.com or indeed.com or any of those other job boards, and you submit the same resume to every single job. It's a canned resume. There's nothing unique or specific about that resume that goes hand in hand to the specific job that's being applied to. And it's a very manila or generic resume. And those are easy to spot by the hiring manager or the recruiter. And I'm speaking from experience. So I thought, well, well, that's kind of shitty because it took me this long to create this resume. Like, there's no way I can craft a unique resume for each job that I'm going to apply to. I mean, you can use a canned resume if you're applying to 5 of the exact jobs at 5 different companies. You know what I'm saying? Then you could use basically the same resume and just kind of tweak it a little bit, and it's basically the same thing. But typically, if you're looking for a job, you're going to find 5 or 6 jobs that you could do that you've got experience in, but they're not all going to be the exact same job at the exact same company. There's going to be differences with each job. So you want to curtail your resume unique to that job because it gives you a higher probability of moving on to the next round in the interviewing or hiring process. So I encourage everyone to create a unique resume for every job that they apply to. And you can do this very easily and very quickly by using the career management document that's been derived from the information found in your I Love Me book.
Right.
So you're repurposing your I Love Me book into a career management document that's then utilized to create unique resumes and cover letters. And even now, I know this is going to shock some people, but in a lot of cases in corporate America, you end up writing your own annual review and your boss reviews it, might add a sentence or two, and then they sign it. Right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Do you write your own review?
No.
Oh,
Actually, I don't, but I have in the past.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I have all my jobs in the past. I've written my own review, and then I submit it to my manager,
It's crazy.
and they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, I agree with this. I'm going to change this 2 words here. Okay, done. And it's very efficient for the manager because these days everybody wants to do more with less. And you've got managers that could have 18, 19, 20 direct reports, and come, end of year time, that's a lot of reviews to write for somebody. I know, I've been there. I've done that. Very, very painful. So, you also use your career management document to help craft your own review. So both your annual review and your semi-annual or mid-year review. So you could use this career management document, which has been derived by our Loving book, for a number of things, a whole host of things. So I just wanted to kind of share that with those of you that are still in the military. Create your I Love Me book. There's a list of things we went through in this episode that kind of get your juices flowing on what you can add to it. I have shared with you some things that you can do with your I Love Me book once you get out of the military. And one of those big ones is to create your career management document. Now, next week, I'm actually giving a course to some folks at Southern New Hampshire University up here in New England. They're students of Southern New Hampshire University. They're also veterans. So I'm putting together I'm calling it a workshop. It's a 2-day workshop where we're going to be going through how to convert military language into civilian terminology and how to create your career management document and to be able to use that to leverage your resume, cover letters, and anything else that you may need for in the corporate world. So more to follow on that, Bennett. I look forward to probably or potentially putting together some information and throwing it up on the Change Your POV website for information for those of you that are listeners that can come and kind of grab that and check that out as well. So if you're interested in that offering, or if you're interested in me putting that together, then hit me up on, you can leave me a comment at changeyourpov.com, or you can send me an email at eddie@changeyourpov.com if this is something that you might be interested in. And you will obviously, Bennett, get the first peek at that
Yeah.
when I get through. So that's pretty much it for this episode. Anything you want to cover?
No, I'm good. I think we covered it all.
All right. Very cool. So thanks. This is the first of a 5-part series. Tune in next week as we talk about education, what types of education you should look at while you're in the military. I'm not talking about education when you get out. This is for those of you that are still in. And then, of course, we're going to follow that up with social media networking. And then we're going to talk about preparing to separate the week after that. And then finally, we'll wrap all this up into a nice episode that we talk about expectations. So with that, thank you for tuning in. I hope this was valuable to you. I might even take some pictures of my I Love Me book and throw it up on the show notes page for this episode. If you can find yours, Bennett, and you want to do that as well, I can also throw a couple pictures of your I Love Me book up there. It'd be kind of cool to see the two different examples.
Sounds good.
All right. You can find all the show notes for this episode at changeyourpov.com/episode 39. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We've got a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, again, my email is eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.